I was recently attending a conference when, as an icebreaker, the facilitator asked us each to tell our entire life story. The catch was that it had to be in the form of a haiku, the famously short Japanese poetry style. Well, this was mine. AK to DC, the slow rise of a half-baked artisan sourdough. With these few pun-filled words, I was only able to hint at the long, winding path that led from my childhood home in Alaska to living and working in Washington, D.C. The details of that journey, and in particular my experience as a non-traditional student, are what I want to share with you today. As the haiku implies, I started life as a sourdough. If you don't already know, a sourdough is a term of endearment that some people use to refer to longtime residents of Alaska. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but growing up in Alaska made my formative years somewhat non-traditional from the very beginning, at least when compared to others who grew up down here in the lower 48. By the way, that's what we call all of you. On a side note, I'd like to take this opportunity to dispel a myth that all sourdoughs are born with beards. It is not true. They do sprout pretty quickly, though. This is an AI rendering of what my future children might look like. All kidding aside, there are a few differences growing up in Alaska. For example, in my elementary school, the teachers would take students like these out into the woods and teach them how to survive off of berries and bark should they happen to get lost. When my immediate family would go and visit my grandparents' cabin in the little town of Hope, we were often greeted by a friendly moose, a 1,200-pound beast, nicknamed, of course, Bullwinkle. So for context, this is an image of Alaska taken by NASA, and Hope is a tiny town on the southern coast shown here in winter. Well, it was a winter like this one when I decided it would be a good idea to try to take a selfie with Bullwinkle while he was bedded down in the snow. I trudged outside, I knelt beside him, and my brother snapped a picture. Well, when the flash went off, Bullwinkle startled, and it was immediately clear that I was too close. Now, obviously, I survived the encounter, but I learned something that day. Don't do that. For your safety and for theirs, do not take selfies with wildlife. If you take nothing else away from today, let it be that. Now, I bring up Bullwinkle because that unwise decision happened when I was 19 years old, the same year that I decided to drop out of college. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that leaving school was an unwise decision, but it was another choice that I learned a lot from, a choice that changed the trajectory of my life and started me down the path to eventually becoming a non-traditional student. And so for anyone who might find themselves in a similar situation, I've distilled my experiences down to about 4 things I think you should know. The first thing you should know is that you are not alone. This is a NASA photograph of the first ever untethered spacewalk by astronaut Bruce McCandless, and it accurately illustrates my anxieties when I thought about going back to school. That as a non-trad, I would be alone and utterly disconnected from my younger peers. But that wasn't my experience at all, and the data confirms it. According to the U.S. Department of Education, a traditional student is one who enrolls in college directly after receiving a standard high school diploma. They attend school full-time as a dependent of a parent, and then they graduate from that same college before the age of 25. So a non-traditional student is everybody else. Everyone who earns a GED instead of a diploma. Everyone who defers enrollment or transfers schools. Everyone who is independent from their parents or who has a child of their own. And everyone like me who dropped out altogether. By this broad definition, the vast majority of U.S. undergraduates, around 75% each year, are non-traditional for having at least one of these characteristics. That's 3 out of every 4 students. But even if you only consider the narrow definition of non-traditional based on the age of students alone, a full 25% are still considered non-traditional for being over the age of 25. That amounted to about 3.8 million students in the most recent data, including more than 40,000 undergraduates who were over the age of 65 at the time. And this is exactly what I found. There were students older, younger, the same age as me, some with similar stories to mine, some with very different journeys that had led to the same place. The truth is, no matter where you are on your own path, you can rest assured that if you choose to become a non-traditional student, you will not find yourself floating alone through space. That is not to say, however, that there won't be moments where you find yourself feeling out of place among your peers. You definitely will. But that brings us to the second thing you should know. Your life experience matters. This is an image of one of my personal heroes, Jose Hernandez, who started out in life as a migrant farm worker and who credits his life experience and family with helping him to develop the work ethic and perseverance that led to him becoming a NASA astronaut. So first of all, life experience can be valuable in a very literal sense. There are some colleges and universities that will accept documented life experiences as academic credit in place of certain courses. This can significantly reduce the overall time and cost for completing a degree. Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington is a good example, and there are many others, but that's not really what I'm talking about. When I say that your life experience matters, what I mean is that the skills you acquire, along with the maturity and growth that occurs as you navigate the world, can profoundly improve your performance in the classroom. At least that's what I found. I left college because I felt a powerful sense of wanderlust. I desperately wanted to go out on an adventure, to pursue my passions for music and art, to see the world, to find and be found. Perhaps most simply, I just wanted to see the world, and this is the world. It's rather a composite image of Earth made up of data from many NASA missions over a long period of time. But as I set off to explore this planet, I didn't have a plan. I thought that I would take a short break from school for a semester or two, then pick up exactly where I left off, and that's not at all what happened. During my break, I moved around a lot, first to Europe, then all over the Western United States, where I explored my various interests. I started out hitchhiking through Spain and Ireland, then I was a musician in California. I learned how to snowboard in Colorado and how to spearfish in Hawaii. All the while, I supported myself by working in the restaurant industry, and then the months slowly turned into years. When I finally did return to the classroom, however, I discovered that all of those life experiences had unintentionally changed me in ways I hadn't previously noticed. Changes that made being back in school feel different and in some ways much easier than before. I was better organized and able to keep track of my schedule. I was better at handling stressful situations and professional relationships. And perhaps most importantly, I had a better sense of who I was and what I wanted to get out of my education. What this illustrates is that no matter where in the world your own adventures have taken you, no matter what experiences you have collected along the way, you will undoubtedly find that you are better prepared to succeed than you realize when you bring your newly gained and unique perspective back into the classroom. Now, it would help, of course, if you were in the right classroom, which brings us to the third thing you should know about being a non-traditional student. You need to do your homework. This is an older photograph of the NASA headquarters building from decades ago. It's where I work now, but I'm only showing it to illustrate that even though we have been located in this building since the cars look like the ones in this photo, not many people outside of the space community know that this institution exists. And when I say you need to do your homework, this is the kind of institutional research that I'm talking about. Drawing on the knowledge of yourself gained through your life experiences that I mentioned before, your interests, your goals, your strengths, and your weaknesses, you need to take the time to carefully search for an institution that will allow you to thrive. When I started doing my own homework, I thought about all the places I had lived over the years, from Los Angeles to that tiny town in Hope. I recognized that I felt most focused and at peace when living in smaller communities, so I decided to look for a school in a small community. As my research continued, I saw that the total cost of attendance, even in small communities, had vastly increased during my break, so I would need to carefully factor in the cost of attendance. This led me to primarily focus my search on public colleges and universities. And then finally, after much more reflection, I had to admit that I hadn't previously thrived in the traditional college model. I had often felt overwhelmed and unable to concentrate. With that in mind, I started looking for non-traditional schools with academic calendars that might improve my overall wellness and performance. Well, ultimately, my search led me to find an affordable state school in a small town with an innovative one-course-at-a-time learning model, a perfect fit for me that I never would have known about had I not taken the time to do the work, looking both inwardly and outwardly. And while the University of Montana Western, where we find ourselves today, might have been the perfect place for me, there are so many other institutions out there that might be the perfect place for you. Other schools with alternative academic calendars like Colorado College or Spalding University, schools that are tuition-free in exchange for work or volunteer commitments like those in the Work Colleges Consortium, or even schools like Landmark College in Putney, Vermont, designed exclusively to serve students who learn differently, including those with ADHD, autism, or a learning disability. So yes, there will be homework, reading, writing, and if you're lucky, linear algebra. But the homework I'm talking about starts before you enroll in college, and it only ends once you've found the right classroom. I have to warn you, though, even after you've put in all that work, things can and will go awry, which brings us to the fourth and final thing you need to know about being a non-traditional student. Your plan will change. This is an image of the Apollo 13 service module that, as you probably know, suffered a major mishap on its way to the moon, causing everyone at NASA, but most importantly, the 3 astronauts on board, to throw all of their original plans right out the window. So when I was living with my grandparents in Hope, thinking about going back to school, I asked my grandfather a question that I wanted a literal answer to. How do I get from where I am to where you are? Content, at peace, looking back over a life of public service and meaningful experiences, with a loving life partner and a family all around. I wanted him to say something definitive like, invest in mutual funds. But he was a retired minister and a philosophy professor, so he said, by being prepared to navigate circumstances you could not possibly have foreseen. Although that question or that answer wasn't satisfying to me at the time, it turned out to be one of the most important life lessons I would ever learn, and it's exactly what I'm talking about when I say that your plan will change and you will need to be prepared. For me, it started on my first day back on campus. I learned simultaneously that my chosen major had been discontinued and that my financial aid package was about $1,000 short of covering my tuition. So standing there in that small school, in that small town, far away from everyone and everyone I knew, I was shattered and embarrassed. Yet I had to make fundamental choices, then and there, about how to adapt if I wanted to keep going. Within a few hours, I had chosen a new major, I had built an entirely new academic plan, I had worked with the school to secure a grant that would cover my financial deficit, and I was on the path to moving forward. Now, these are just 2 examples of the kinds of challenges you might face. But even more difficult might be the opportunities that you will encounter. You see, the other side of this coin is that you will also experience positive circumstances that will force you to question your existing plan. As I progressed with my studies, I was drawn to other disciplines and careers. I took amazing courses in science, literature, and art that made me consider whether or not I should change majors. I had opportunities to study abroad that opened my eyes to a new world of ideas. Then a chance encounter changed everything. Mars. During my second year back in school, one of my professors mentioned the remote possibility of an internship at NASA and wondered if I might be interested. The prospect was truly daunting and far from anything I had previously aspired to, and I would need to make a quick decision and get to work because the applications were due. I made the choice to pursue the opportunity, and I ended up working at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California for one summer, studying Mars. This experience created a new direction for my entire academic life and ultimately led me to where I am today. So as a non-traditional student, you too will have plenty of chances to learn to navigate the unforeseeable circumstances that my grandfather warned about. And along the way, you will need to learn how to adapt to forces that are out of your control, and you will need to cultivate faith in yourself to know when to say yes to a tempting opportunity, as well as when to say no. Now, this is a NASA composite image of the Phantom Galaxy using data from both the Hubble and James Webb Space Telescopes. It's one of my favorite images of the universe. And I put it up because going to college is not necessarily the right choice for everyone. Depending entirely on the individual, there are plenty of other pathways in life that might be better choices, and one would be wise to consider all of their options. But if you find yourself in a position like I did, where becoming a non-traditional student feels like the right path, I hope you will find this advice useful. It will not be easy. You will need to first overcome any lingering anxieties and make the decision to enroll. You will need to build your confidence knowing that your life experiences have prepared you to succeed. You will need to deeply reflect upon yourself to find the right institution, and you will need to be ready to react to unexpected challenges and opportunities that will force you to reevaluate everything. But if you do choose to become a non-traditional student, you will open the door to a universe of possibilities, and you will embark upon the living of a life less ordinary. Thank you.